Hello YouTube, my name is Gauntlet and welcome to my tutorial for morale in Call of War. The importance of morale cannot be understated. It affects nearly every facet of the game. The biggest thing it will affect is your economy. A high morale will usually equate to a healthy economy. And a healthy economy will allow you to build more buildings to facilitate your economic growth and to produce more units to expand your military. In short, good morale maintenance will give you the tools to win the game. And hopefully, this video will give you the knowledge to do just that. All your provinces produce a certain amount of resources. Manpower, money, and one of the 5 construction resources: food, goods, metal, oil, rare. Morale affects the percentage of these resources that will be produced. And so the potential amount of resources you can produce is based on productivity. There's a base value for all your provinces, and that is increased with infrastructure, industrial complexes, and naval bases. And if it's your core territory, it's going to be at 100%. And if it's an occupied territory, it's going to have a minus 75% non-core production penalty. Morale greatly affects the percentage of those resources that are produced. Sky Badger has made a great video discussing the math of how morale affects resource production, and I posted a link to that video in the description. But basically, for every 10% of morale reduction, so if this was down to 90%, I would lose about 7.5% of that province's resource production. That's a rough estimate of the math. Manpower, however, is an exception. So, even if this was at 0% morale, I'd still get 149 helmets per day, for example. Boom. Money went up, manpower stayed the same. As you progress through the game, there will be multiple things that will be reducing your morale and therefore reducing your economic output. The first thing that can do this are wars. Every war, up to 5 wars, will lower the max morale of your provinces by 5%. I have 5 wars, and so every one of my provinces has this at over 5 countries minus 25. And so the max morale of that province is reduced by 25. This can have a major impact on your economy if you do not take capitals and elevate your morale every day. Minus 25 without anything to boost it back up, just do some of the math in your head. Minus 25 equals approximately an 18.75% reduction in your economic output. And that can be very big, especially when you're a large country. Every single one of these morale reductions over all your provinces will add up to be a huge difference in your total economic output. So, in order to avoid the large morale penalty wars give you, it is best to start a war right as day change happens, so you have 24 hours to fight a war against an AI or a player, and hopefully finish it before the next day change or the day change after that, so that the morale effect a war gives you is not applied for as long as possible. And if you do finish a war within that 24-hour window, then the game will never register that war as a morale decrease, because all morale changes, except for taking and losing a capital, are calculated at day change. Another thing that affects morale negatively are adjacent provinces, and this only happens when provinces adjacent to the province you're looking at have a low morale themselves. So for example, Lutsk has a minus 21 to its max morale because of its neighbors. And so Lusk has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 neighbors, and all these neighbors are at around 50% morale. Whereas if I look at Tindu, it actually has a plus 7. Or let's look at something more neutral, 77. This province has no morale influences from its adjacent provinces. And these are all in the 70s, so if you have provinces in the 70s, then they will not negatively affect their neighboring provinces. However, if they're below, like in 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s, then low morale provinces will decrease the morale of their adjacent provinces. And I'm sure you can see how this can be a spiraling effect that can greatly reduce the morale or greatly increase the morale of your nation. The maximum effect a neighbor can have on its neighbor's morale is 5%. So a minus 5% is the most it can be reduced. That takes a pretty low morale for one province to do that to another. It's usually between 0 and 5% reduction. Also, adjacent hostile provinces will also reduce the morale of your provinces that they border. And each hostile province that borders one of your provinces reduces its morale by 5%. One of the things that you especially have to worry about on large maps like this is negative food production. Negative food production can have very horrible effects on your morale. Depending on how much of a negative per hour you can have up to minus 40% max morale on all of your provinces. And that can be devastating, which is why I always prioritize food production in my cores, and if I have to, I'll look at my province list and build infrastructure on double food producing provinces in non-core territories, just so that I will always have plenty of food to feed my provinces, to maintain the daily consumption, and also to maintain the upkeep of all my units, because negative food production can be a killer. And if you ever get desperate for food, you can always disable the barracks in your provinces, because each barracks requires a certain amount of upkeep in food. And so if you're not building any units, then I would suggest simply disabling your barracks so that you get that extra food production and it doesn't hurt you at all because you're not building any units, and the unit build reduction will not matter. Negative production for other resources will also reduce your morale. However, that's only really possible for oil. You can with goods and rare, but I have literally never done that before, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. But if you do so happen to get negative in these other resources, then there will be slight morale reductions, but the main one you have to worry about is food. Another big factor in this game that can decrease morale is the distance of your provinces from your capital. The greater the distance, the lower the max morale is. However, the maximum morale decrease you can get is when your provinces are 2.5 days or further away. And when they're 2.5 days or further away, they will get a minus 39 to their max morale. And that's the max. If they're 5 days away, then they'll still be minus 39. But closer in, they'll still be a minus, like for example, this one's minus 17 for 1.2 days. So it's always good to have your capital in your cores where most of your industry is, because this is where most of your economic output is going to be, and you want the morale here to not have a major decrease from the distance to capital. However, like I said before, all of these decreases will only occur at day change. But if you lose your capital, if an enemy army takes this province, I will lose an automatic 20% morale across all of my provinces. And that is devastating, because not only will I lose a big portion of the money I have in stockpile from losing my capital, but my resource production and my unit production will greatly suffer. And if I have a war to fight, that can be a killing blow to lose my capital in the middle of a war. And if you do happen to lose your capital, I would suggest rebuilding it as soon as possible in a relatively safe location so that you can start increasing the morale of that new area that you have placed your capital in. And lastly, the last thing you have to worry about reducing your province morale are economic saboteurs. Economic saboteurs have a chance at day change to reduce the morale of the province they are in. And they can have a very large effect if there are no counter-espionage spies in those provinces that they act in. And so, to protect the morale of your industry, it is good to place counter-espionage spies in provinces you deem necessary to your war effort. Otherwise, economic saboteurs can run rampant and greatly reduce your economic output. Now that I got you all thoroughly demoralized, we can start talking about things to help you increase the morale of your provinces. First, your capital. The province your capital is in will have a 25% increase to its max morale. So I would suggest putting that in a relatively safe location, but in a location that you highly value the resource that is being produced there. Also, provinces that are friendly and adjacent to the province you're interested in can provide positive morale to that province. And the maximum morale increase per province is +2. This does not work with provinces that are part of a person that you are in a coalition with or have share map with. It only works with your own provinces. Provinces that are of a foreign country will have no effect on this neighbor's morale influence. Now for my favorite way to increase the morale of my provinces: infrastructure. Each level of infrastructure increases the morale development of that province by 5%. So level 1, 5%, level 2, 10%, level 3, 15%. And this, combined with its large increase to resource production, makes it a great way to increase your economy and also provide a morale buffer against wars that you may find yourself in. So I always try to build level 3 infrastructure in all of my resource producing cores to maximize my economy. And this can also be used in non-cores, of course, to increase resource production and morale development. If you're really desperate, you can use it far away from your cores so provinces won't rebel, but I would not suggest that. Instead, I would suggest using forts. Each level of fort increases the max morale of that province by 5%. So a maximum of 25%. I advise only using this tactic on large maps that may require you to move your capital away from your cores. And I would of course start by building forts in your cores to again provide a morale buffer against wars, and also if you do move your capital away and your cores will have to deal with the whole distance from capital morale decrease. Forts can be pretty expensive to build in large numbers, which is why I would only suggest using them on the world map and a couple other maps, because otherwise they're not worth it. And if you are, again, desperate to maintain morale far away from your capital, then forts can be used to help prevent faraway provinces from rebelling. But definitely use them in your cores first, as this will allow you to move your capital to troubled areas to boost morale there, and also provide a little bit of extra defense in the event your cores do get invaded. And the last way to boost your morale is, of course, to take an enemy capital. If you take an enemy capital, you will get an automatic 10% increase to the morale across your entire country. And that can be very beneficial for a multitude of reasons. Just for the pure economic increase, and also to prevent provinces from rebelling, of course. And if you can do that several times to an enemy that you're fighting, then those negative 20% to their morale across their whole country will cripple them economically. One thing that you can do to help your morale development in other parts of your country on a big map like this is to move your capital. Like, if I wanted to boost the morale of Ukraine because it has a -30 because of the distance to capital decrease, I could build my capital in Kiev, and that would greatly reduce that reduction. However, that would increase the reduction of my provinces over here. And so, in order to decrease the effect that would have on these provinces, I would suggest building forts, building infrastructure to provide a buffer to your morale in those provinces, especially in your cores, because your cores will, of course, be producing the majority of your resources. And also, common sense, don't build your capital in a place that can be easily taken by an enemy, because of course that will hurt you greatly. So using the knowledge I just gave you, you can plan out your conquests in two main ways: speedily or steadily. Speedily, of course, will allow you to take land quickly and crush your competition. However, this will greatly hamper the morale development of all of that land you are taking, because it will usually be far away, and like I said, the provinces around them will all have low morale, and therefore will contribute to the neighbors' decrease in morale. And that can compound to permanently reduce the morale in that area. But to avoid that, you can conquer quickly, but make sure you get a capital at the end of that conquest, so that all of the land you just took will get a big boost, and you won't have to worry about it revolting anymore. Otherwise, if you can't do that, if you know you won't get that morale boost at the end, and you know you can't move your capital to that area you are conquering, then it is best to conquer steadily. This means taking as few as one column of provinces per day, so that you can really focus on the morale development of each province you take. So let's say I started here, and I took these three. I could build forts here while I had them for a day, allow these provinces to have high morale, and their high morale will help the morale improve in the neighboring provinces. And I can wait until these provinces get high morale, and then move on to the next one. And it's a slow but steady cycle, so that the morale will be high in all the provinces I take, and the chance of revolt will be nil. That concludes this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, leave a like, and comment any advice you have. I will see you on the battlefield.